In the afterlife, a clipboard is more terrifying than any demon. Thomas Reed thought he was a good person until he was forced to face the classmate he betrayed and the father he let die alone. In this office, the truth is the sharpest weapon. The truck's headlights filled Thomas Reed's world for exactly 1.3 seconds. Long enough to understand, not long enough to do anything about it. The light turned yellow. Thomas's foot hovered between gas and brake, that eternal moment of indecision that every driver knows. The rain made everything worse. Slick roads, blurred vision, the windshield wipers beating a rhythm that matched his tired heartbeat. 43 years old, accountant, divorced, no kids. Driving home from another late night at Morrison and Associates, where he pushed numbers around spreadsheets and tried not to think about how his life had become a list of things that didn't happen. The truck didn't hesitate. It came from the right, running the red, no brakes, just momentum and mass and the simple physics of metal meeting metal. Thomas saw the driver's face in that 1.3 seconds, young, eyes wide, mouth open in a scream Thomas couldn't hear yet. Then, impact. The sound came first, not a crash, but a crunch, like someone stepping on an aluminum can, except the can was Thomas's sedan and the foot was 8 tons of commercial freight. Glass exploded. Not shattered, exploded. Into diamonds, into dust, into air. Thomas's body tried to follow the laws of physics, tried to keep moving forward while the car stopped. The seatbelt caught him, held him. Something in his chest cracked, ribs, sternum, something important. The world spun, the car rolled, once, twice. Metal screamed, Thomas screamed, then silence. Perfect, terrible silence. Thomas hung upside down in his seatbelt. Blood ran into his eyes, not pouring, just leaking, steady, warm. He tried to breathe. His lungs wouldn't inflate properly. Something was wrong, very wrong. Rain poured through the broken windshield, cold, clean, washing over his face. He could see the street, upside down, people running toward him, headlights, brake lights, the red and blue flash of emergency vehicles that hadn't arrived yet, but would, soon, maybe. His phone was ringing somewhere, muffled under the seat, in the wreckage. He couldn't reach it, couldn't move, could barely think. His vision was tunneling, white edges closing in like curtains. This is it, Thomas thought. This is how it ends. Not dramatically, not meaningfully, just accidentally. The cold spread from his chest outward, his fingers, his toes, his face. Someone was shouting nearby, emergency instructions, telling him to stay awake, to keep breathing, to hold on. Thomas tried, but the cold was so complete, so total. The last thing he felt wasn't pain, it was relief, that finally, he could stop trying. Then fluorescent lights. Bright, white, endless. Thomas gasped, sat up. He was sitting in a chair made of gray plastic, the kind from a waiting room, molded, uncomfortable, designed for temporary use. His hands were in his lap. He was still wearing his work clothes, white shirt, blue tie, khaki pants, all soaked. Rainwater dripped onto the carpet beneath his shoes. The smell hit him, burnt rubber and rain and something metallic. Blood, he realized, but when he touched his face, there was no wound, no blood, just wet skin. In front of him was a desk. Standard office desk. Laminate wood, gray metal legs, a computer monitor, a telephone, a cup of pens. And sitting behind it was a woman, mid-40s, neat brown hair pulled into a bun, reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She wore a gray pantsuit that looked like it came from a department store clearance rack. Professional, but not expensive. She was looking at a clipboard. When Thomas appeared, she glanced up and smiled. Not warmly, not coldly, just professionally. "Good afternoon, Thomas Reed," she said. Her voice was pleasant, the kind of voice that makes announcements in airports. "Welcome to your exit interview." Thomas stared at her. His mind was still in the car, still hanging upside down, still feeling the cold spread through his chest. His throat was dry. His tongue felt thick. "I was in an accident." "Yes," the woman said, still smiling. Am I in the hospital?" "No." "Then where—" "You're dead, Mr. Reed." She said it the way someone might say, "You're late for your appointment," or "You forgot to sign the form." Matter of fact, administrative. Thomas's heart should have stopped, but he could still feel it beating. Couldn't he? He pressed his hand to his chest, felt something, pressure, movement, but not quite a heartbeat, more like the memory of a heartbeat, an echo. "Dead?" he repeated. "Yes." She marked something on her clipboard with a pen. "Check." "I know this is disorienting. Everyone says that." Thomas looked around. The room was an office, a very ordinary one. Beige walls with those standard corporate motivational posters, teamwork, excellence, integrity, except the images were slightly wrong. The people in them had their faces turned away, or their features were blurred, or they were just silhouettes. Gray industrial carpet, the kind that shows every stain but never looks clean. It smelled like old coffee and photocopier toner, and something else, something stale, like a room that had been closed up for too long. Behind the woman was a door, steel, institutional, with a small window and a sign that read, "Interview Room A." Behind Thomas was another door, identical, sign reading, "Waiting." No windows anywhere. The fluorescent lights above buzzed at a frequency that made Thomas's teeth ache. "So this is—" Thomas swallowed. "This is heaven?" The woman paused, looked at him over her glasses, then made another mark on her clipboard. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves," she said. Thomas's hands were shaking. He pressed them flat against his thighs to make them stop. The fabric of his pants was still damp, cold water soaked through to his skin. "Can I—" his voice cracked. "Can I call someone? My brother, my ex-wife, someone who can—" "That would count as an admission of guilt," the woman interrupted pleasantly. Thomas blinked. "What?" "Asking for a lawyer or representation, that implies you've done something wrong." She smiled. "Have you done something wrong, Mr. Reed?" "No, I don't understand what's happening." "You're being evaluated." She clicked her pen. "Standard procedure for all arrivals. This will just take a moment. We'll be reviewing your life for compliance issues." "Compliance with what?" "General decency, check. Basic morality, check. Acceptable human behavior, check." The pen moved fast, efficient, like she'd done this 1,000 times. Now then, she adjusted her glasses. Let's begin with some simple questions. Have you ever told a lie? Thomas felt his throat tighten. Well, yes, everyone has. So that's a yes. She made a mark. The pen scratching across paper was the loudest sound in the room. Have you ever hurt someone's feelings intentionally? I mean, probably, sometimes, in arguments or... Check. Have you ever enjoyed someone else's failure? Thomas hesitated. I don't think I... Think harder, Mr. Reed. An image flashed through his mind. Jim from accounting, getting fired last year. Thomas had felt, what? Relief? Satisfaction? Jim had been incompetent, had made Thomas look bad in meetings. When Jim left, Thomas got his office. Maybe, Thomas admitted. Once or twice. Check. Have you ever let someone suffer when you could have helped them? That's not fair. I can't help everyone. No one can. That's not what I asked. The woman's smile never wavered. Have you ever had the ability to help someone and chosen not to? Thomas thought about the homeless man outside his office building, the one who sat there every morning asking for food. Thomas walked past him 5 days a week, never stopped, never gave anything. But that was different, wasn't it? You couldn't help everyone. If you tried, you'd go broke. Mr. Reed. I suppose, Thomas whispered. Check. The sound of that pen was like a nail being driven into wood. Have you ever wished harm on another person? No. The woman looked at him, really looked at him. Her eyes were gray, flat, like old coins. Are you certain? Thomas's mind raced. Wished harm? No, he wasn't violent, wasn't cruel. He was just... His ex-wife, Jennifer, during the divorce, when she'd hired that aggressive lawyer, when she'd taken the house, the car, half his retirement, he'd thought, just for a moment, just in the anger, I hope she gets what's coming to her. I hope she suffers. He'd never acted on it, never said it out loud, but he thought it. That doesn't count, Thomas said. His voice sounded weak even to himself. I never did anything. I just thought. Oh, we count thoughts too, the woman said brightly. Those are often worse. She made another mark. Thomas felt sweat bead on his upper lip despite the cold. This isn't fair. You're twisting everything. Of course, that's my job. She flipped to a new page on her clipboard. Let's move on to specific incidents. The incidents started small. On March 14th, 2013, you ignored a homeless man asking for food outside your office. I was broke that month. I couldn't, but you bought coffee 30 minutes later. She showed him a receipt, printed, official looking, time-stamped 9:47 a.m. Starbucks, grande latte, $4.75. Thomas stared at it. How do you have that? We have everything, Mr. Reed. She set the receipt aside. So you valued your comfort over his survival, marking that as callous indifference. Check. That's not what happened. I didn't think... Exactly. The next one. On July 2nd, 2017, you wished a coworker would get fired. Jim, of course. He was terrible at his job. He was making the whole department look bad. Did he get fired? Yes, but intent and outcome aligned, marking as malicious satisfaction. Check. I didn't make him get fired. I just enjoyed it when he did. Thomas clenched his fists. Everyone feels that way sometimes. We're human. We can't control every thought that, can you? The woman tilted her head. Or do you simply choose not to? She flipped the page. More incidents. On November 9th, 2018, you watched a video of a person being injured and laughed. It was a fail video. Those are supposed to be funny. So you took pleasure in someone else's pain. Check. On May 6th, 2020, you saw a message from a friend in crisis and didn't respond. I was overwhelmed. My mother had just died and I was dealing with the funeral but you watched 3 episodes of television that evening. She produced another document, Netflix viewing history, time-stamped, 3 episodes of a crime drama, 2 hours and 17 minutes. Thomas felt his stomach drop. Sarah needed you, the woman continued. She told you she was having suicidal thoughts, and you chose entertainment over intervention. She had other friends. She had family. I wasn't her therapist. She killed herself 6 weeks later. The room spun. Thomas gripped the edge of the desk. What? Sarah Berkman, age 32, overdose, June 17th, 2020. The woman showed him an obituary. There was Sarah's photo, smiling, alive in the picture, but dead in the words below. Thomas's vision blurred. I didn't know. She never said. She said exactly that in the message you ignored. The woman's voice was gentle, almost kind, which somehow made it worse. Marking as neglect resulting in death. Check. Thomas couldn't breathe. His hands were numb. This couldn't be real. She'd been fine. She'd posted on social media after that. Had she? Or had he just assumed? How many messages had he ignored that year? How many people had he let slip away while he dealt with his own problems? The woman watched him with those flat gray eyes. Are you ready to continue? Thomas shook his head. She continued anyway. The accusations came faster. Smaller things mixed with bigger ones. Emotional manipulation of romantic partners, unspoken cruelty to service workers, secret envy of friends' success, imagined violence during arguments, each one delivered with the same pleasant efficiency, each one marked with the same damning check. Thomas tried to defend himself, tried to explain, but every explanation sounded like an excuse. Every excuse sounded like a lie. And maybe they were. Maybe he'd been lying to himself for 43 years. Then she said something that made his blood stop. On August 4th, 2022, you poisoned a neighbor's dog. Thomas stared. What? You poisoned a dog? No, I didn't. Are you denying it? Yes, I've never poisoned anything. I don't even know anyone with a dog. The woman made a note. Interesting, strong emotional reaction. That's because you're lying. Am I? She produced a photo, a small brown terrier dead, lying on its side in someone's backyard, timestamp in the corner, August 4, 2022. I've never seen that dog in my life. Haven't you? She produced another photo. Thomas, standing in a yard, holding what looked like a bag of something. The image was grainy, taken from a distance, but it was definitely him or someone who looked like him. Thomas felt panic rise in his throat like bile. That's not me, or if it is, I don't remember. Memory is unreliable, the woman said. Records are not. Check. No, you're making this up. You're putting me in places I've never been, accusing me of things I'd never do. Are you saying the documentation is false? Yes. She nodded slowly, made another mark. Denial, very common, marking as refusal to accept responsibility. This is insane. Also common. Check. Thomas stood up, his chair scraped backward. I want to leave. Please sit down, Mr. Reed. No, this isn't real. This is some kind of nightmare or hallucination or... The lights flickered. Once, twice. The door behind him, the one marked waiting, vanished. Not opened, not locked, just gone. Smooth beige wall where it had been a second before. Thomas spun back to the desk. The woman was still smiling. Leaving early counts as refusing to take responsibility for your actions. That's another sin, I'm afraid. You can't keep me here. Oh, we absolutely can. She made another mark on her clipboard. The pen sounded like a gunshot in the silent room. Thomas sat down. What else could he do? The woman flipped to a new section. The pages were getting thicker, more accusations, more incidents, things Thomas didn't remember, things he couldn't have done, things that made no sense. On December 11th, 2021, you pushed a man into traffic. No. Are you sure? Yes. Then why do we have video? A screen slid up from the desk, smooth, mechanical, like it had been waiting there all along. The video played. Grainy security footage, a dark street, two figures. One of them was Thomas, same height, same build, same jacket he owned. The figure shoved the other man into the road. Headlights, impact. Thomas screamed, "That's not me. I've never been on that street. I don't..." "It has your face," the observer said. "I don't care. It's fake. It's etiquette." "Is it?" She paused the video, zoomed in on the face. It was Thomas, definitely Thomas, every detail perfect. "I couldn't have done that. I wouldn't." "People always say that." Check. The video disappeared. The woman turned another page. On February 19th, 2019, you stole money from your employer. No. On June 8th, 2016, you lied under oath. I've never been to court. On September 30th, 2014, you assaulted a stranger in a bar. I don't go to bars. Check, check, check. The pen moved mechanically, unstoppable. Thomas's mind was fracturing. What was real? What had he actually done? How could he prove anything when they had photos, videos, documents that showed things he knew had never happened? Unless he'd forgotten, unless his memory was lying, unless he really was the monster this clipboard says he was and he'd just been too blind to see it. "Please," Thomas whispered, "please stop." "We're nearly finished with this section," the woman assured him. She wasn't even looking at him anymore, just reading, marking, processing, like he was a tax return, like his entire life was just data to be audited. Thomas put his head in his hands. His shoulders shook. He couldn't tell if he was crying or just trembling. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The carpet smelled like mildew. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a terrible thought took root. What if she's right? What if I'm exactly as bad as she says? The woman finally set down her pen. Thomas looked up. His eyes were red. His face was wet. "That concludes the preliminary assessment," she said. "Preliminary?" "Yes. Now we move to verified incidents." Thomas's stomach dropped. "What's the difference?" She smiled. "These are the ones we know you did." She pulled out a thin folder. Unlike the thick clipboard of endless accusations, this folder was small, maybe 20 pages, but the weight of it seemed infinite. "These," she said, sliding it across the desk, "are the sins that didn't need to be invented." Thomas stared at the folder. His hands wouldn't move. "Open it," she said, not unkindly. He opened it. The first page showed a photograph. A boy, maybe 16, skinny, acne scars, wearing a backpack that looked too heavy for his thin frame. Thomas recognized him immediately. Marcus Chen. The name hit Thomas like a physical blow. High school, 15 years ago. Thomas could see it as clearly as if he were standing there again. The hallway at Lincoln High, green lockers lining both walls, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the smell of industrial cleaner and teenage desperation. Marcus stood at his locker between third and fourth period. Alone. Always alone. 3 boys approached. Tyler, Brett, someone whose name Thomas had forgotten. The popular kids, the ones who made high school a hierarchy and enjoyed their place at the top. Thomas stood 20 feet away, part of the watching crowd. Not popular, not unpopular, just there. Tyler grabbed Marcus's notebook, papers scattered across the floor, homework, drawings, personal things Marcus had tried to keep hidden. The crowd laughed. Tyler made a joke, something about Marcus being a loser, a freak, someone who'd never matter. Marcus looked up. His eyes met, and Thomas saw something in Marcus's expression that he'd spent 15 years trying to forget. Recognition. Marcus had thought Thomas was different, had thought maybe, just maybe, Thomas might help. Instead, Thomas laughed. Then Thomas turned away and walked to class. The woman's voice brought him back to the present. "Marcus Chen committed suicide 3 months later," she said quietly. "He left a note. Would you like to see it?" "No," Thomas whispered. She showed him anyway. The note was handwritten, shaky letters, some words crossed out and rewritten. "I thought some people were different. I thought Thomas might understand. But when he laughed, I knew. Nobody was going to help. Nobody cared. I'm tired of being alone." Thomas's hands trembled holding the page. "I was 15, he whispered. "I was just a kid. I didn't know he would." "He was 15 too," the woman said, "and he's still dead." Thomas's vision blurred. The paper fell from his hands. "His mother spoke at the funeral," the woman continued. "She said Marcus had been seeing a therapist, making progress, starting to feel hopeful. Then something happened that set him back. The therapist's notes mention betrayal by someone he trusted." She turned the page. A photo of Marcus's mother, 50-something, gray hair, face carved hollow by grief. "You didn't go to the funeral," the woman noted. "I didn't know how. You didn't want to know how." Thomas pressed his palms against his eyes. "I was scared. I was guilty. I didn't know what to say." "So you said nothing?" "Yes." The word came out broken. The woman made a mark in her folder, not a checkbox this time, a different symbol, a circle, like marking something important. She turned to the next page. A woman, early 20s, long dark hair, bright smile. Lena Moretti. Thomas felt his chest tighten. "No," he said. "Yes." College, 20 years ago. Lena sat across from Thomas in the campus coffee shop, hands wrapped around a mug of tea she wasn't drinking. Rain streaked the windows. November, cold, that dead time between Halloween and Thanksgiving when everything feels gray. "I love you," Lena said. Thomas looked at her and felt nothing. No, that wasn't true. He felt something. He felt trapped. They'd been dating for 8 months. She was kind, smart, beautiful in a quiet way that grew on you. But Thomas didn't love her. He'd said it once early on in that hazy post-sex moment when everything felt possible and words came easy. He'd said, "I love you," because she'd said it first, and saying nothing seemed cruel. But he didn't mean it. And now, 8 months later, she sat across from him with hope in her eyes and asked, "Do you love me?" Thomas should have said no, should have been honest, should have ended it clean. Instead, he said, "Of course I do," and watched release flood her face. Because it was easier, because he liked having someone, because being alone scared him more than lying did. "You stayed with her for another year," the woman said, "even though you knew you'd leave eventually, even though you knew she was planning a future you had no intention of sharing." Thomas nodded, couldn't speak. "She introduced you to her parents, started talking about moving in together after graduation, made plans." "I know." "And you let her because it felt good to be wanted, because her love filled a hole in you even though you gave nothing back." Thomas's throat burned. "I tried to care. I wanted to love her. But you didn't." "No." The woman showed him another photo. Lena, graduation day, standing alone, no Thomas beside her. "You broke up with her 2 weeks before graduation," the woman said, via text message, after she'd already signed a lease on an apartment for both of you, after she'd turned down a job in another city to stay near you. "I panicked. You were cruel." "Yes." The admission felt like coughing up glass. "She called you 17 times that day," the woman continued. "You blocked her number." Thomas remembered. God help him, he remembered. Sitting in his dorm room, hearing the phone buzz again and again, knowing it was Lena, knowing she was devastated, and feeling annoyed, just wanting it to be over, wanting her to stop needing him. So he blocked her number and went out with friends and got drunk enough to forget the sound of her sobbing voicemail. "She dropped out of school," the woman said, "moved home, took 2 years to recover, never quite trusted anyone the same way again." She showed him one more photo. Lena now, older, harder, smile that didn't reach her eyes, alive but damaged, because of him. The woman marked another circle. The next page, an older Nan, 70-something, proud, stern, Thomas's father. "No," Thomas said, "not him, please." "Why not?" "Because he was the cruel one. He was the one who—" "Tell me what he did, specifically." Thomas opened his mouth, closed it. What had his father done? Yelled. Yes, his father yelled a lot. About grades, about sports, about Thomas not being good enough. Had he hit Thomas? No. Threatened him? Not really. Insulted him? Yes. Called him soft, lazy, disappointment. But was that abuse or just old-fashioned parenting? Thomas's memories felt slippery, unreliable. "He was hard on me," Thomas said finally. "And you," the woman asked, Were you hard on him? 15 years ago. Thomas's father sat in the hospital bed. Cancer, stage 4, the kind that doesn't get better. He looked smaller than Thomas remembered, thinner. The stern man who dominated Thomas's childhood reduced to a skeleton wrapped in paper-thin skin. "I'm glad you came," his father said, voice weak, raspy from the treatments. Thomas sat in the chair by the bed, far enough away that they wouldn't accidentally touch. "Mom said you wanted to see me." "I wanted to talk before..." His father gestured vaguely at the IV drip, the monitors, the machinery keeping him alive. "Before it's too late." Silence. The monitors beeped, steady, mechanical. "I wasn't a good father," his father said finally. "I know that. I was too hard on you, expected too much. I wanted you to be strong." Thomas said nothing. "I'm proud of you," his father continued. "I know I never said it, but I am. You're successful, independent. You did well." More silence. Thomas could feel words building in his throat. Years of anger, resentment, hurt. But also something else. Sadness, loss. The knowledge that this was his last chance to connect with the man who raised him. His father waited, hopeful, vulnerable for the first time in Thomas's memory. Thomas stood up. "I have to go," he said. "I have work in the morning." His father's face collapsed. "Thomas." "I'll come back later." He never did. His father died 3 days later. Thomas went to the funeral. Said nothing. Felt nothing. Or told himself he felt nothing. The truth was harder. The truth was that he'd wanted his father to suffer, wanted him to die knowing Thomas didn't forgive him, wanted revenge for every cruel word, every disappointment, every moment of feeling not good enough. And he got it. The woman showed Thomas the hospital records. Visit log, 1 entry, 15 minutes, no follow-up. "He asked to see you twice more," the woman said. "The nurses called. You didn't answer." Thomas's face was wet. He deserved it. Maybe, but did you? What? You carry him with you every day, every relationship, every moment you feel not good enough. He's still there, and you chose to let him die before you could let him go. She marked a circle, larger than the others, darker. The accusations continued, smaller ones now, but no less true. The barista Thomas had yelled at for getting his order wrong, not just correcting, yelling, because he was stressed and she was there, and it felt good to make someone else feel small. The friend Thomas had betrayed by sleeping with his girlfriend, not during the relationship, after, but still a betrayal, still a wound. The coworker Thomas had sabotaged by taking credit for her work, just once, just to get promoted, but it had worked. She'd quit 3 months later. Each one a small cruelty, each one deliberate, each one something Thomas had justified or forgotten or buried under layers of rationalization. But here, in this room, under these fluorescent lights, there was no justification, just truth. And truth, Thomas was learning, was sharper than any lie. The woman finally closed the folder. "These are your real sins, not the invented ones, not the exaggerations. These are the things you actually did. Thomas couldn't look at her, couldn't look at himself. "Am I going to hell?" he asked. The woman stood, pressed a button on her desk. Behind her, a new door opened. It was labeled Interview Room B. "No, Mr. Reed," she said softly. "You're already there." The door closed behind Thomas with a sound like a coffin lid. Interview Room B was bigger than Room A, much bigger. It stretched in every direction like a warehouse, rows and rows of desks disappearing into fluorescent infinity. Each desk had a lamp, a clipboard, a seated figure. People, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all sitting in gray plastic chairs, all looking tired, pale, defeated. They looked human, wearing ordinary clothes from ordinary lives, but their eyes all carried the same expression: resignation. They knew what this place was, what it did. A woman in a gray suit pushed Thomas toward an empty desk. Not the same woman. This one was younger, harder. Her name tag read Administrator 7. "Sit," she said. Thomas sat. Across from him, a man sat with his hands cuffed to the desk, not with handcuffs, with something else, something that looked like metal but moved like liquid, restraints that adjusted to his every movement. The man's eyes were bloodshot. Papers were stacked around him in towering piles. "You're new," the man whispered. Thomas nodded. "How long have you been here?" Thomas asked. The man laughed, a horrible, hollow sound. "I don't know. Days? Years? There's no clocks, no windows, just this." He gestured at the endless room. Thomas looked down at his own desk. A file sat there, thick, too thick, his name printed on the front, Reed Thomas, complete record. His hand shook as he opened it, page after page. Every moment of his life, every conversation, every thought, every private shame, things he'd forgotten, things he'd tried to forget, things he never knew were being recorded. There was the time in 3rd grade when he'd laughed at a girl who wet her pants, the time in 6th grade when he'd stolen money from his mother's purse, the time in high school when he'd spread a rumor about a girl who'd rejected him. Every small cruelty documented, every selfish act cataloged, every moment of being human analyzed and labeled and judged, and beneath each entry a category: selfishness, cruelty, cowardice, malice. "Oh God," Thomas whispered. The man beside him leaned over. "Don't read it all at once. You'll break." "I need to know what they're accusing me of." "They'll add more," the man said. "They always do. Every time you finish, they find new things, new interpretations, new sins you didn't know you committed." A speaker crackled overhead. "Attention all interviewees, please continue reviewing your files. Complete honesty is mandatory. Denial will result in additional review." Thomas flipped another page. There it was, the incident with the dog, the one he knew he didn't do. But now there was more detail, photos, testimony from neighbors, a veterinary report, all showing that Thomas Reed had poisoned a small brown terrier named Buddy on August 4th, 2022. "But I didn't," Thomas said aloud. "I swear I didn't." Administrator 7 appeared beside him. "Denial is noted," she said pleasantly. She stamped something on his file. The ink was red, resistant. "I'm not denying the things I did, but this is fake. I never—" "All claims of false documentation must be submitted in writing. Forms are available at Processing Station C. Current wait time is approximately 700 years." She walked away. The man beside Thomas sobbed quietly. "They said I killed my brother. I don't even have a brother, never did. But they have photos, documents, testimony, and I can't remember anymore if it's real or not." Thomas looked at him, saw the madness creeping into his eyes. Maybe you did have a brother. Maybe I forgot. Maybe my whole life is a lie and theirs is the truth, and I just can't see it because I'm broken and wrong. And he dissolved into incoherent sobbing. Thomas felt cold spread through his chest. This was the real torture, not the accusations, the uncertainty, the erosion of knowing yourself. Hours passed, or days, or minutes. Time didn't work right here. Thomas read his file, page after page, his entire life reduced to sins and failures. Some of it was true. Marcus, Lena, his father, the barista, all true. Some of it was false. The dog, the man pushed into traffic, other things he'd never done. But the false accusations were mixed so perfectly with the real ones that Thomas began to doubt his own memory. Had he poisoned that dog and forgotten? Had he pushed that man and blocked it out? How could he be sure? His memories felt like wet paper, tearing, dissolving. A bell rang somewhere. Administrator 7 appeared. "Time for review," she said. She placed a fresh stack of papers on his desk. The top page read, "Additional violations, retroactive assessment." "What does that mean?" Thomas asked. "It means we reassessed your past actions with new criteria." "But the past already happened." "Yes, but our understanding of it evolves," she smiled. "We've determined that several actions you performed, while not technically sins at the time, would be considered sins under current moral standards." "That's insane." "That's comprehensive." She walked away. Thomas looked at the new stack. New accusations appeared, things that hadn't been sins before, but apparently were now. On September 3rd, 1992, you failed to recycle a plastic bottle. Thomas was 5 years old. On March 17th, 2003, you made an insensitive joke about a cultural group you don't belong to. It was a joke he'd heard from a movie. Everyone laughed. It was normal then. On June 9th, 2015, you purchased clothing made in a sweatshop. It was from a department store. How was he supposed to know? Each one marked guilty. Check. Thomas wanted to scream, but screaming wouldn't help. Nothing would help. This was designed to be endless, comprehensive, inescapable. Time became meaningless. Thomas read his file until his eyes burned, defended himself until his voice went hoarse, confessed to things he didn't do just to make it stop. But it never stopped. New pages appeared, new sins, new interpretations. The other people in the room were all doing the same thing, reading, weeping, breaking. Some had been here longer. Thomas could tell by their eyes. Empty, hollow, no fight left. They just mechanically turned pages, admitted to everything, signed forms, processed. One woman had been here so long, her fingers had worn grooves in the desk from tracing the same patterns over and over. One man rocked back and forth, whispering, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry," on endless repeat. This was hell. Not fire, not demons, just bureaucracy. Endless, grinding, inescapable bureaucracy. And the worst part? Thomas was starting to believe it, starting to accept that maybe he deserved this. Maybe everyone was. Maybe being human itself was the sin, and this was the punishment. A voice echoed through the room. "Interviewee Reed, please proceed to final review." Thomas was pulled from his chair. The endless desks vanished. He was back in a small office. The original woman sat behind the desk, smiling. The file on her desk was now impossibly thick, hundreds of pages, thousands. You have accumulated 9,417 documented sins, she said. Would you like to dispute any? Thomas opened his mouth, then closed it. Which ones were real? Which ones were false? He didn't know anymore. Let me ask you something simple, the woman said. Do you believe you are a good person? Thomas thought about Marcus, about Lena, about his father, about all the small cruelties and large failures that made up a human life. I tried to be, he whispered. She marked something. Evasion. Then no, I'm not good. Another mark. Self-condemnation. Thomas felt something crack inside him. There's no right answer, is there? The woman smiled. Now you're learning. The file kept growing. Pages slid in from nowhere, fresh accusations written in ink that hadn't dried. Thomas's mind felt like it was splitting. He began to confess to everything just to make it stop. I'm sorry, he said, for all of it, everything, real or not, I'm sorry. The woman leaned forward. Which parts specifically? All of it. That's not specific enough. I don't know. I can't remember. I don't know what's real anymore. She paused. Then, slowly, she smiled wider. Excellent, she said. You're ready for the next phase. The walls began to stretch. The ceiling rose. The door behind the woman opened. It led to another room, but this one was different. Smaller, quieter, just a single table, a single chair, and a single man waiting. He looked exactly like Thomas. Same face, same tired eyes, same nervous way of clasping his hands. Please sit, the man said. Thomas hesitated at the threshold. Which one of us is real? The other Thomas smiled faintly. Both. Neither. Does it matter? Thomas entered. The door closed behind him with terrible finality. He sat. The other Thomas slid a thin folder across the table. Your final test. Inside was a single page. Final evaluation. Do you accept full responsibility for everything you have ever done and everything you might have done? Yes? No? Thomas stared at the words. If I say no, then you're resisting truth. And if I say yes, then you're admitting guilt to crimes you didn't commit. Thomas laughed, broken, hollow. So I lose either way. Welcome to hell, the other Thomas said. They sat in silence. Thomas looked at his double, at himself, at the man he'd been and the man he'd become. Are you me? Thomas asked finally. I'm the part of you that remembers everything, the reflection said. Every selfish thought, every cruel impulse, every moment you chose comfort over compassion. I couldn't live like that, remembering everything. The guilt would... That's why you didn't. The reflection leaned forward. You buried it, rationalized it, told yourself stories about who you were. Good person, trying his best, victim of circumstances. I did try. Did you? The reflection's eyes were cold. Or did you just do the minimum required to feel okay about yourself? Thomas thought about Marcus, standing in that hallway, watching him be humiliated, having the choice to speak up, choosing silence. "I was scared," he whispered. "So was Marcus and Lena and your father. Everyone's scared. That doesn't make you special." Then what was I supposed to do? Be better. 2 words. Simple. Impossible. Thomas felt tears burn. "I'm just human. We all make mistakes. We all—" "And that's the excuse," the reflection interrupted. "That's how you lived 43 years hurting people and still believing you were good because everyone does it, because I'm only human." "So what? I should have been perfect?" "No, you should have tried harder." The reflection pushed the evaluation form closer. "Sign it." "If I do—" "If you do, you admit that everything in that file is your fault. Every sin, real or invented, you accept total responsibility." "And if I don't?" The reflection smiled. "Then we start over." Thomas looked at the form, at the 2 options, yes or no, guilt or denial, acceptance or resistance. There was no right answer. That was the point. This wasn't about justice. It was about breaking you, teaching you to hate yourself so completely that you'd confess to anything, admit to everything, accept eternal punishment because somewhere deep inside you believed you deserved it. And the horrible truth? Maybe he did. Thomas picked up the pen. His hand shook. The reflection watched. "I accept responsibility," Thomas whispered, "for everything." He signed. The moment the pen left the paper, everything changed. A bell chimed. The walls dissolved. The woman with the clipboard appeared, smiling brighter than ever. "Congratulations, Thomas Reed. You've completed your evaluation." Am I free?" She gestured behind him. A door had appeared. It was labeled Interview Room A. The same room, the same desk, the same chair, fresh clipboard. Thomas felt his hope die. No, this is the same." "Yes," the woman said cheerfully, "but this time you'll do better. You understand the process now. You know what we expect." "I already admitted to everything." "And you will again, each time more thoroughly, each time more honestly, until there's nothing left to hide." Thomas backed toward the door he'd entered through. It was gone, only smooth wall. "Why?" he asked, voice breaking. "Why do this?" The woman tilted her head. "Because hell isn't about punishment, Mr. Reed. It's about truth. And the truth is that you will never be able to forgive yourself. Not fully, not ever. Because every time you try, we'll show you something new, something you forgot, something you buried, something you didn't know was a sin until we told you it was." She opened her arms. "Welcome to eternity." Thomas was pushed into the chair. The lights buzzed. The clipboard opened. "Good afternoon, Thomas Reed. Welcome to your exit interview." And as the questions began again, the same questions, the same accusations, the same grinding process, Thomas finally understood. This wasn't about what he'd done. It was about never being allowed to forget, never being allowed to move on, never being allowed to forgive himself, because forgiveness meant escape, and escape meant freedom, and freedom was the one thing hell could never permit. So the interview continued forever.